How ancient people kept fire alive through endless rain. The worst thing about endless rain is not that it kills the fire. It is that it leaves the next fire nowhere to be born. Imagine a night without matches, lighters, or a dry room. Rain has been falling for days. The ground feels like soaked hide. Every branch is cold and slick. At the center of camp, the fire has collapsed into a small cluster of red embers. There is no flame. It looks almost dead. Yet cooked food, warmth, light, dry clothing, and a measure of protection all depend on that dim red glow. Ancient people were not universally helpless if a fire went out. Archaeological research shows that some early populations knew how to make fire through friction or percussion. Evidence associated with Neanderthals suggests that iron-bearing minerals could be struck with flint to create sparks. Later fire-making kits also survive in the archaeological record. But being able to make fire is not the same as being able to make it easily. Anywhere. At any time. A spark needs somewhere to land. It needs material that is dry, fine, and ready to catch. In prolonged rain, tinder absorbs moisture. Hands become cold. Fuel smokes instead of burning. A skill that works reliably in dry weather can become an exhausting gamble. So the first strategy in a storm was not heroic fire creation. It was preventing fire from truly dying. The flame could disappear. The ember had to survive. Slow-burning charcoal, thick wood, and dense fuel could be gathered into the center of the hearth and covered with ash. Ash is not merely waste. It slows heat loss and offers some protection against stray drops of water. But the ember cannot be sealed completely. Without oxygen, it dies. The keeper must leave tiny paths for air, allowing the red core to breathe slowly. The hearth's location mattered just as much as the fuel. It needed shelter beneath a rock overhang, inside the edge of a cave, or under a constructed roof. But it could not sit where runoff collected. Wet ground pulled heat away from below. So stone, dry soil, or an older ash bed could help isolate the fire. The roof needed to shed water. The sides needed to block gusts. Smoke still needed a way out. This was not a pile of wood. It was a miniature climate system. The driest material had to be collected before the storm. Thin twigs, bark, grasses, wood shavings, and tinder could be stored beneath shelter or dried near the body and hearth. Even when the outside of a log was soaked, splitting it might reveal a drier interior. The secret was not a magical species of wood. It was knowing where water entered, where heat escaped, and how to preserve a little margin at every step. Preparation began long before the first drop fell. Clouds, wind, animal behavior, and rising humidity warned experienced people to move fuel under cover. The real survival skill often appeared when nothing dramatic was happening. Fire behaved like a living thing that demanded food and attention. Every adjustment of ash, every protected bundle of tinder, and every piece of split wood was a struggle for the next meal, the next night's warmth, and the possibility of reaching morning without surrendering to the dark. In heavy rain, the winner was not the person who made the largest flame. It was the person who understood that a single red line could be enough. Keeping fire alive did not depend on one secret tool. It depended on breaking combustion into different speeds. Flame is bright, but it consumes fuel quickly and is easily scattered by wind and rain. Embers are dim, but under the right conditions they endure. Ancient fire keepers needed some fuel for the heat of the present and some for the fire of tomorrow. Thick wood could not simply be thrown into a heap. The arrangement had to balance contact, airflow, and moisture. Too loose, and heat escaped. Too tight, and oxygen disappeared. A skilled keeper watched color, smoke, and temperature. deciding when to open the ash bed, when to add carbonized material, and when to leave the hearth alone. Shelter needed to extend beyond the fire itself. Bark, timber, woven material, or a cave roof could stop direct rainfall. But no wet cover could rest too close to the heat. It might drip, collapse, smoke, or ignite. The ideal arrangement let water run away on a slope, admitted air from a protected side, and released smoke above. Fuel was not one category. It was a chain. Tinder accepted the first spark. Slightly larger kindling transformed a weak glow into flame. Only then could thicker fuel take over. In prolonged rain, every link had to be protected separately. Large logs were useless if there was no dry tinder after the ember died. Dry grass alone produced a brief flash and vanished. Survival depended on keeping the entire chain intact. Archaeology rarely preserves a living ember. What remains are repeatedly used hearths, ash and charcoal layers, fire-making tools, and materials that may have served as tinder. These traces show that fire was not simply discovered and then left to chance. People chose locations, prepared fuel, cleaned hearths, and organized camp life around heat. The hearth was a kitchen, but also a drying station, workshop, source of light, and center of night watch. Old ash had value, yet it also required management. It could insulate the ember, but damp, compacted layers could restrict air. Waste mixed into the hearth could increase smoke or contaminate cooking. Maintaining fire meant knowing what to preserve and what to remove. Fuel scarcity could even reshape the menu. Food that required hours of boiling might be sliced, roasted, or prepared differently. Drying clothes, cooking, heating, and tool production could be scheduled around the same fire so that one unit of heat performed several jobs. Efficiency did not mean using less fire. It meant wasting less heat. And the safest system did not necessarily rely on one hearth. Several families, nearby camps, or multiple fire beds could provide redundancy. If rain destroyed one source, embers might be borrowed from another. We often imagine prehistoric survival as individual cleverness, but resilience usually lived in relationships. The best storehouse of fire may have been the knowledge that someone nearby was still awake beside another hearth. That made firekeeping a social duty. One person's neglect could cost an entire group its warmth. Fire gathered people together, but it also demanded schedules, distribution, and trust. The longer the rain continued, the more technology became institution. The smaller the ember, the heavier the responsibility. Sometimes people did not leave fire at the camp. They taught it to travel. At the early Neolithic site of La Draga in northeastern Iberia, archaeologists recovered several kinds of fungi from waterlogged deposits. Some showed evidence of modification and partial charring. Researchers have argued that certain nundable fungi may have been used as tinder. The famous alpine iceman also carried fungi, including a species widely interpreted as part of a fire-making kit. When properly dried and prepared, fungal material can accept a spark. Some dense pieces can smolder slowly, allowing heat to survive longer than it would in loose grass or an exposed chip of charcoal. That does not mean every ancient society used the same fire mushroom. Different environments offered different barks, fibers, plants, woods, and traditions. Archaeological evidence is incomplete. Fungi could also be used for food, medicine, or other crafts. A responsible reconstruction must distinguish possibility from proof. The common principle, however, is clear. People searched for material that was dry enough to catch, slow enough not to vanish, and controllable enough to carry. The ideal fire carrier did not blaze. It stayed quiet. During transport, a smoldering material had to be protected from rain while receiving a small amount of air. Left open, it could be soaked or consumed by wind. Sealed completely, it suffocated, depending on place and period. Embers may have been stabilized in bark, wood, pottery, or other insulated containers with ash, fiber, or charcoal fragments. Many exact designs are inferred from ethnography and experiment rather than directly preserved artifacts. So certainty has limits. The physics does not. Smoldering is slow oxidation. It needs oxygen, but not too much. The container must prevent burns, accidental fires, and rapid heat loss while allowing a controlled flow of air. Carrying fire and rain was not a matter of placing charcoal in a pocket. It was continuous regulation. Portable embers saved energy. When a group moved camp, hunted away from the main settlement, or searched for better shelter, producing a fresh fire could take time and dry resources. A living ember changed the sequence. At the destination, people could place it in prepared tinder, feed it air, then add kindling and larger wooden stages. A red point almost too faint to see could become a working flame again. The most dangerous moment was often not the journey. It was opening the carrier. Wet wind could steal heat in seconds. Shelter needed to be ready first. Tinder, kindling, and fuel had to be arranged before the ember was exposed. Get the order wrong, and hours of careful protection could fail instantly. Modern people often press a switch before checking whether the system is ready. Ancient firekeepers had to build the environment first and awaken the fire last. Transport could also be a relay. One person carried the ember, others their dry fuel, prepared cover, or blocked the wind with clothing and bodies. What looks like materials science was also coordination science. A successful ember carried three things at once: heat, knowledge, and a backup plan. Portable fire changed humanity's relationship with space. Warmth no longer belonged to a single campsite. Cooked food, light, and protection could be reproduced elsewhere. Humans did not merely possess fire. They made a natural force follow them across the landscape. When the last ember dies, a group may lose more than heat. It may lose the structure of the entire day. Without reliable fire, wet clothing remains cold. Food cannot be cooked. Night work ends. Some predators may move closer. The quieter cost is time. People must search for dry material, prepare tinder, and attempt ignition again and again, in an environment where energy is already scarce. That labor is stolen from hunting, childcare, shelter repair, and tool maintenance. Fire keeping may have shaped human time itself. Who watches the first part of the night? Who adds fuel when the rain intensifies? Who wakes the ember in the morning? These tasks require schedules. Fire extends the evening, creating space for conversation, teaching, and craft. But it also divides sleep into turns. One of civilization's earliest clocks may have been the red glow fading inside a hearth. We often treat fire making as the great breakthrough and fire maintenance as a minor detail. Rain reveals the error. Invention solves the first moment. Maintenance, he solves every day after it. Skill makes fire appear. Institutions help it remain. One person who can produce sparks is valuable. A group that stores dry fuel, maintains shelter, shares duties, and teaches the next generation is much harder for weather to defeat. That pattern continues into the modern world. Electrical grids, water systems, communications networks, and hospitals are enlarged versions of the same problem. We experience the output and forget the night shifts. Inspections, spare parts, backup routes, and emergency stores that keep it alive. Our systems usually fail not because nobody invented them, but because maintenance became invisible. Ancient groups living through long rain did not ask only, "How do we make fire?" They also asked, "How do we prevent every failure from happening in the same place?" They stored fuel at different scales, preserved more than one source, and distributed knowledge among multiple people. Redundancy can look wasteful in calm weather. During a storm, it is simply honest. Fire also changed the distance between people. A family might refuse to share food, but refusing an ember was different. The next storm could reverse the roles. Exchanging fire became a form of mutual insurance. Today, I return light to your hearth. Tomorrow, your coals may rescue the entire camp. This is why the fire in the rain did not belong only to the best fire maker. It belonged to the watcher, the gatherer, the wood splitter, the carrier, and the neighbor willing to open a protected hearth when someone else had failed. Perhaps the true sign that humans mastered fire was not the first flame. It was the moment we learned to care collectively for something that any one of us could lose. Our tools are now unimaginably more powerful. Oh, yet the principle has not changed. Fire, electricity, information, and public trust can all fade when no one maintains them. Technology does not remove fragility. It lets us manage fragility through preparation, cooperation, memory, and repair. The ember hidden under ash is therefore an early image of civilization itself. It is not spectacular. It does not promise to live forever. It asks each generation to receive it, protect it, and pass it to someone who has not yet learned how to face the dark alone. When the next storm arrives, our switches may be more advanced than anything our ancestors imagined. But if no one is willing to maintain, back up, and share what keeps them working, how long will the light last?